Hey everybody, this is Chapter 8, Lesson 1. This is World War II, the Major Events, Part 1. This will take us up to Pearl Harbor. So before we start, this war gets divided into three phases for us. At the very top of page 133, where it says Phase 1, this first phase is American isolation and neutrality. So make sure you write that at the top of the page, please. American isolation and neutrality. This is when America does not want to be involved in this war and tries to stay out of it. World War II begins with the invasion of Poland by Germany. It sets off the war. Germany agreed with the Soviet Union, or made an agreement with the Soviet Union, that the Soviet Union could have the eastern part of Poland and Germany could have the western part of Poland. And the Soviet Union would also invade the Baltic nations, Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania. You can see them on the map there just above the little purple spot. I seem to have cut off Estonia, no offense. But Stalin is trying to make this little buffer zone because he's kind of scared of Hitler, so he feels if he has those Baltic states and he has the eastern part of Poland, then he has a little bit of a safe zone from Hitler. So there's Stalin, and there's Ribbentrop. He's representing Hitler, and so they have an agreement that they're going to leave each other alone, a non-aggression pact. Hitler wants part of Poland because Poland used to be part of Germany. Here we see some Nazis goose-stepping. That's that marching into the capital of Poland, Warsaw. Britain had appeased Hitler, and that was the term for it, appeasement. They made him happy. They had made a deal with him that he could have Czechoslovakia and Austria if that was it. But if you give a mouse a cookie, he's going to ask for a glass of milk. And if you give Hitler Czechoslovakia and Austria, he's going to want more. So after that, the war has been declared, and then nothing really happens for a while until Germany invades France and captures Paris. They go through Belgium. You'll recall that back in Chapter 6 I talked about how the Germans brought the British into the war by invading France through Belgium. Well, Germany does it again. And they invade France through Belgium. They capture Paris May 10th, 1940, and France falls pretty soon thereafter. Now, after World War I, it was such a devastating war and really traumatic for France. France built up this massive fortification along their border that they call the Maginot Line. It looks like it says Maginot, but it's Maginot. The Maginot Line, one of the most impressive fortifications ever built. Massive guns digging deep underground, bunkers. It was thought that this could defeat any attack like they had seen in World War I. But World War II isn't like World War I. Now we have air power and the Nazi blitzkrieg, or lightning attack. The German planes come in fast, making way for the tanks, fast tanks to come in behind. This is a kind of warfare that Hitler has been preparing for, and the French were not. And the French were hoping to avoid this war. And so the French and Paris falls to the Germans, and Hitler has his revenge for what the French did and how the French treated the Germans after World War I. So he takes great delight in having them surrender to him. And the British are there, but the British are pushed back across the English Channel at Dunkirk in France. Nobody is quite prepared to handle the German military. So as soon as France falls, that begins the Battle of Britain. The British retreat back to Great Britain across the English Channel, and the Germans, the German Luftwaffe, the German Air Force, bombs first the coast of Britain and then deeper into Britain at London, and this tries to make Britain surrender so that an invasion of Britain across the English Channel will be easier. And so the Battle of Britain is also known as the Blitz, where the Germans bomb London and try to catch London on fire and burn London. If you ever see or read the book Chronicles of Narnia or seen the movie, um, the children are sent out of London into the rural parts of Britain to protect them from the Blitz or the Battle of Britain. So the Battle of Britain is the British people trying to survive this bombing. It's marked by pictures like these, buildings just on fire, falling apart, and people just trying to put the fires out. Once the Germans capture Denmark and Norway, they have Britain surrounded, and they're able to just send their bombers in. And the only defense that the British really have is the Royal Air Force and a new invention called radar. And radar allows them to know when the Germans are coming and where they're coming. And so the Germans are left to think that the British have this huge air force, when in reality they have a few people who are able to anticipate the German attacks pretty quickly and respond to them pretty quickly. But it's a huge job for a small group of fighter pilots to take. But they are successful eventually in defeating Germany once the long-range bombers get over over London. Once they're over London, then the Royal Air Force is able to take out the bombers because they're going so far inland that they have no protection from German fighters. And that's how the British survive and keep calm and carry on. And in fact, that's that slogan you've seen so many places, that meme of keep calm and carry on. That starts here. That's the keep calm just in case there's an invasion. And here we see the Prime Minister to the King, the Prime Minister of England, Winston Churchill, surveying the wreckage. Just some things you don't have to write down, but radar allowed the British to find the attacking Germans quickly, and the total civilian losses were 23,000 dead and 32,000 wounded. And this brings us to Phase 2 of World War II, economic aid to the Allies. So America is not completely neutral. We've decided to help the Allies, but we're not directly involved yet. That's Phase 2, economic aid to the Allies. Write that down, please. Now, to help out Great Britain, America decides to become the arsenal of democracy, to help out the British. The idea that President Roosevelt uses, if your neighbor's house is on fire, just loan him your garden hose and he'll put the fire out and get it back. You don't want World War II to be over here. We don't want to get involved in this war. We don't want to fight the war. We want to help Britain, one of our strongest allies, to survive the war, put the fire out. So Lendlease, the United States gives Britain war supplies, old naval warships, in return for military bases in the Bermuda and the Caribbean. So you loan somebody something, it means you can have it and give it back. You lease it means you can have it in exchange for something, kind of like renting it. So we let them have naval warships, war supplies, aid, food, in exchange for Bermuda and the Caribbean. That's Lend-Lease. We're lending them some things and leasing them others, letting them have the fire hose to put out the fire. Now, to set up what's coming, because Pearl Harbor, you've heard of it. Pearl Harbor is an event coming up, but that involves the Japanese. Where did that come from? At the same time that Hitler and the Germans are taking over their space in Europe, and they're also attacking Britain, at the same time, on the other side of the planet, there's Japan, who's taking their cue from Roosevelt's corollary, and they're becoming the police power for the Pacific. In the middle is America. This is where Chapter 5's industrialization comes in, and we have this tremendous ability to produce things that Britain needs. So we're producing them, and because they're cut off from trade because of German submarines and they're trapped in their island, Lend-Lease is us giving them things that we can without getting involved in the war, because Americans don't want to be involved in this war. They didn't want to be involved in World War I, and they don't want to be involved in this World War. But Roosevelt is determined to give them aid, and that's what Lend-Lease is. But even as we're focusing on Europe, we also cut off trade with Japan because of what Japan is doing in China. They're brutalizing the Chinese. They're doing horrific things to countries they're invading in the Pacific. So we cut off trade with them, and we increase our trade with Britain. That leads to the attack on Pearl Harbor. And that would be phase 3 of the war, direct involvement. Write that down on 135. December 7th, 1941. Rising tension developed between the United States and Japan because of Japanese aggression in East Asia. And then on December 7th, 1941, Japan attacked the United States at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii without warning. And America had been sending a lot of its Navy, naval equipment, naval boats, planes, sending that to Great Britain. And so we were already weakening our Pacific fleet. And the Japanese decided that this is a good time to attack the remaining fleet in Hawaii. And that would leave them free to, as they said, run wild in the Pacific. The attack was devastating. We had 2,403 U.S. soldiers die and 1,178 wounded. Normally you'd see the opposite of that. Normally you'd see more wounded than killed. But because there were so many sailors who were sleeping, resting in the boats when the boats are attacked, the casualties are tragically high, and this is devastating for our Pacific Fleet and our ability to do anything against the Japanese. And because of that, the Japanese will the next day they'll invade the Philippines, the country we got after the Spanish-American War. So it's a huge blow for the Americans, but it's also it marks the moment when Americans begin to just mobilize to go to work and prepare for this war. Roosevelt will declare war on the Japanese. He declares this December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The backstabbing of the Japanese. So the U.S. will declare war on Japan and Germany. As we discussed last lesson, the Germans and the Italians and the Japanese all sign what they call a tripartite, or a three-party pact, that they're going to defend each other. They are the Axis powers, the axis that the world revolves around. So because Japan declares war on us, Germany has to declare war on us. The German military wishes that Hitler hadn't, but he did. Now, with most of the U.S. naval fleet destroyed at Pearl Harbor, the U.S. had a huge advantage to this war in the Pacific. And remember that World War II is really two wars. It's a war in the Atlantic against Germany and Italy, and it's a war in the Pacific against Japan. And the Battle of Midway marks this turning point in the war in the Pacific with the Japanese, where we go from losing to winning. That's what the turning point is, like Saratoga or Gettysburg and other wars. The United States was victorious over Japan in the Battle of Midway. The victory was a turning point of the war in the Pacific. And it's a highly improbable victory because America is outnumbered. We only have 3 aircraft carriers left at all compared to 7 from the Japanese. But they send 4 of those carriers to Midway. And because we know they're coming, we send our last 3 aircraft carriers. A final gamble. And we managed to catch them by surprise. And in the end, we destroyed all 4 of their aircraft carriers. And 1 of ours was destroyed. So Midway was a huge turning point in the war in the Pacific. After that, the Japanese will be fighting a mostly defensive war. And it's a brutally defensive war, but still, it marks a turning point in the Pacific. Meanwhile, in the other war, over in Stalingrad, Russia, Hitler, it turns out, surprise, surprise, is a liar. And he lied to the Soviet Union about having an alliance with them. And so he invades Russia. And if you asked Hitler's generals what his greatest mistake was, this might be it. His choice to invade Russia, Operation Barbarossa, is successful at first. He managed to cut through about almost 5 million Russians on his way to the oil field near Stalingrad, and he needs the oil to keep his army going. But on his way to get that oil, he stops Stalingrad, and he tries to take the city of Stalingrad, named after the leader Stalin, Joseph Stalin. But Joseph Stalin won't give up this city. So hundreds of thousands of Russian soldiers, and then eventually Russian citizens, die defending this city. But they managed to hold the German army there until the Soviet army can regroup and reform and surround Stalingrad and defeat the German army. And this is a huge, huge defeat for Germany and for Hitler. And so really this marks the turning point in the war against Germany. From this point on, Hitler is fighting a defensive war, just as Japan after Midway is. After this, Hitler is fighting for his life, and he's losing from here on out. Stalingrad is a horrific battle, but it is a turning point. It does change history. And this brings us to the end of part 1 of the major events of World War II. Next time we'll do part 2, where we're going to start with D-Day. Bye, everybody. Have a good day.
Hey, guys. Oh, crap.